Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting here at City Council chambers as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and watch the meeting on Wave Channel 18 and through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. And Pastor Mark from Grace Life Church will be giving the invocations this evening, and Mayor Carl Skint will begin the meeting immediately after.
And council, it's good to be here. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you this day. We thank you for this wonderful day, and we pray, Lord, for our council meeting tonight, and give all the council members wisdom and guidance, Lord, as they deliberate the items on hand. And may every decision be a righteous decision. And Father, we want to thank you for every elected official, every business, every church, every family and individuals that are represented today that make up our great city, Lincoln. And we thank you to continue to prosper and bless our great city and everyone represented here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Mark.
I will call the meeting to order for the City of Lincoln regular meeting, July 23rd, 2024. Meeting of the City Council, the Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Lincoln Public Financing Authority. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Joyner?
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Here.
And Mayor Carl Skint.
Here. Report from the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. There is no reportable action tonight.
Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. It will be led today by Aaron Fry, our Economic Development and Communication Specialist. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Does anyone on the council or staff have agenda modifications they wish to make?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll go with the agenda as it stands. First item on the agenda under item 6 presentations is the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency Transit Comprehension Operations Analysis. Matt?
Tonight we have Mike Costa with us, and he will be presenting the comprehensive operation analysis and the recommendations that the PCTPA makes for our transit system, what enhancements they recommend to increase ridership and the value to the community. With that, I'll introduce Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As Matt mentioned, I am Mike Costa with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, here today to present a project that we are working on that involves the planning of transit services for the City of Lincoln. The project that I'm talking about is our Comprehensive Operational Analysis, or COA, as we like to refer to it. And what that project essentially does is it's looking at, and its goal is to focus on improving transit services that create a more integrated and coordinated network for all of our transit riders here in the South Placer region, including the City of Lincoln. We started this effort actually with partnership with our member jurisdictions, staff from the City of Lincoln, as well as our transit operators and other stakeholders back in July of last year. And it's our obligation as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency to conduct a short-range transit plan every 5 to 8 years. That's what PCTPA typically does. However, in this effort, the COA goes a little more beyond that requirement, and we really are looking at the opportunity to, again, structure potential future services to better address the needs that we have here in South Placer with our transit riders. I'd like to present a little bit of an overview of what kinds of transit services exist today for the city of Lincoln. Your community is actually served by Placer County Transit that provides multiple services, both fixed route and on-demand services here at the city. In fiscal year 23-24, it was estimated that your services cost around $1 million to provide that service. And it resulted in approximately 47,000 rides or boardings, as we'd like to refer to them as well. The services that are provided in Lincoln, you can see actually indicated in the routes with yellow, blue, and green, as well as shaded green. Those route services, the yellow, blue, and green lines, those are different routes that come into Lincoln or serve within Lincoln. The Route 20, which is the green line coming in from the south side into Lincoln, into downtown, that is your intercity route that connects Lincoln to Rockland and to Roseville at the Galleria. It runs every hour, and it runs roughly Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, and on Saturdays as well at the same schedule. The yellow route that you have is actually your Route 70. That's also known as your Lincoln Circulator. That route also runs Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m., or excuse me, 7 to 5 p.m., and then it runs on Saturdays, 8 to 4 p.m. And a lot of the riders on that route, aside from local residents, are also school riders. And so there is you can see a little bit of the blue route, which is your Route 80, and that is an extra, what I would call school tripper or extra bus that comes into play around your AM and PM peak hours, right around the school bells, to pick up the extra capacity of student riders that would not otherwise fit on the Route 70. They ride the Route 80, and it follows, as you can see, roughly the same path around Lincoln. Then you also have your on-demand or dial-a-ride service known as the Lincoln Dial-a-Ride. And what that does is it provides origin to destination services in the city of Lincoln city limits for anyone to take from, say, their house to the store, or for a lot of residents, we see a lot of people from Sun City take that service to different locations in Lincoln for medical appointments or shopping needs. So those are your services that exist today. And again, you had roughly about 47,000 riders on those services collectively in fiscal year 23-24. So what have we done with the COA? So we analyzed that service, and one of the things that we have found, we've looked at performance of the services here in Lincoln and across our entire region. We evaluated different generators of trips. Where would people want to go here in the South Placer region, or where are we seeing people go, using various different data sources that we evaluated. And we also conducted public outreach, multiple rounds of outreach in the fall and in the spring of this year. And then we also are right now, and I'm going to share it a little bit later, but we are in another public review period until mid-August. What we also did was we set up goals and objectives for our COA service routes so that we could evaluate the success of routes moving forward. So we aren't just proposing services that we want to propose for no reason. We actually have very strict criteria that we've worked on with our local partners, City of Lincoln, and other members of our Project Technical Advisory Committee to establish metrics by which we are proposing these service recommendations so that we can evaluate their effectiveness and success. And then that bottom bullet is very important as well, where we've worked extensively with various stakeholders, including members from your staff here at the City of Lincoln, all of our transit operators, and we've worked in partnership with other stakeholders to really try to get a well-balanced set of views and objectives and perspectives to best serve the diversity of our riders here in South Placer County. Moving forward, what have we learned? So one of the important things to note is the Route 20, which is that intercity route that connects Lincoln to Rockland and Roseville. That is actually one of the best performing routes in our entire network, and that's included in all of South Placer region. Your Route 80, which is that overflow route, is well-performing because it has a lot of student riders that board that bus in the AM and the PM services to get to different high schools and middle schools here in Lincoln. What we've heard from the public in our rounds of outreach is that the public wants more frequent services. both here within Lincoln and other parts of the region, as well as better connections to other cities within South Placer from Lincoln, as well as other parts of Sacramento, the greater Sacramento region. We also know that Lincoln is a very fast-growing city, probably one of the fastest-growing cities here in this region, and so there's a need potentially for future transit services to serve that growth, especially in the western portion of Lincoln. And then lastly, one of the things that is also important to know is that PCTPA a few years ago was successful in getting a large grant to establish a pilot transit express service from Lincoln, connecting to the city of Roseville and ultimately down to the Watt I-80 light rail station. That is going to start, it's anticipated, I should say, in spring of 2025, and that will provide a express-like service from Lincoln all the way to Watt I-80, running every 30 minutes, Monday through Friday, typically between the hours of 8 to 7, I believe. We're still adjusting those routes, but the other thing to note is that the park and ride facility right now that is very underutilized, I would say, here in the city of Lincoln, is a key candidate location for the start or the northern terminus of that Rapid Link project due to its availability for parking, as well as its availability for that express-like service to not have to be bogged down by any further traffic within Lincoln or any other location. So it's an easy access location for that Rapid Link to get in and out. The other thing is I have been talking to Yuba Sutter Transit, who recently conducted their own COA. And as part of their COA, they had adopted a service plan that recommended a service route between Marysville and Roseville. And they are actually considering now stopping at that park and ride facility as well, instead of going all the way into Roseville. And they would just transfer riders to the Rapid Link Express service. That, again, we're looking at that park and ride facility. So that is where that park and ride facility kind of comes into play that I'll talk about later on. So what is being proposed? So I want to caveat this slide by saying that these are all options. They're all draft options. And these are all ultimately up to the city of Lincoln to determine whether or not they want to implement in partnership with your agreement with Placer County Transit to serve the city of Lincoln. So whatever gets approved by PCTPA or accepted by PCTPA as a recommendation for this plan will ultimately still have to come to Lincoln City Council to be adopted and implemented in your agreement with Placer County Transit. We aren't telling you what to do. We're just making recommendations based on all the data and the evaluation and analysis that we did. So one of the things that we looked at that we are recommending in the draft proposal is improving service on Route 20 to increase that frequency from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. It would result in roughly $37,000 additional in cost for operating and result in about 5,800 new riders. Here, this is all relevant to the city of Lincoln. Of course, that route does connect into Rockland and Roseville as well. For the Lincoln-specific services, which is your Route 70, we are proposing some minor modifications to that service. And the first one being is looking at rerouting that Route 70 to the park and ride lot that I mentioned over there off of Lincoln Boulevard/Industrial. And then also extending the Route 70 to serve First Street and Third Street in a better way all the way out to Joyner Parkway. You can see it actually with that blue dotted line right outside of downtown, or excuse me, right outside of central Lincoln. So those two collective improvements would cost approximately $13,000 annually in addition to what you're paying now. And it would result in some additional ridership around the tune of 1,100 new riders annually. And then the last proposal that we're recommending, again, preliminary in this draft, is that we add approximately 4 weekday service hours to each weekday, so Monday through Friday, at a cost of approximately $105,000, which would help address what we're seeing as some of the current capacity issues on dial-a-ride that exist today, especially around the PM and AM peak periods, as well as provide for new service opportunities to serve or better serve western parts of Lincoln that will not have fixed route transit. So we know those areas are growing, and so our proposal is to recommend these additional hours to your dial-a-ride, which would essentially add another bus to your Lincoln service area. Right now, you have 2 dial-a-ride buses that run around Lincoln. This would add a 3rd bus. So that is the proposed recommendations. These draft recommendations and that service plan are available for our public to review over the next several weeks. And it increases your ridership by approximately 8,400 riders annually, and it increases your cost to Lincoln by approximately $155,000. Again, this is just the draft proposal. I mentioned that right now, the service plan and proposal as a draft format are under review. So we actually just launched that public review yesterday, and it's available through the middle of August. And you can visit all of this information and see all of the details of this service proposal on our website that's listed on this slide. We are going to continue coordinating with our partners here at the City of Lincoln, their staff, as well as our transit operators to make adjustments to this service plan if we receive additional feedback, both from council, from staff, as well as from the members of the public on this draft proposal. And then ultimately, we anticipate going to the PCTPA board, of which Councilmember Joyner sits on, to have the board accept this proposal, but then ultimately the transit providers, in this case Placer County Transit, would have to bring this to their respective board to adopt in a subsequent nature after our board accepts it. And then ultimately, following that process, it would be up to the City of Lincoln and Placer County Transit to negotiate what services they would like to implement as part of this plan. It's important to note that, if Lincoln were to choose to implement some of these service recommendations, how would they pay for them? Well, right now, one of the primary sources available to Lincoln to pay for public transit services is your local transportation funds, or your LTF funds, administered through the Transportation Development Act, which our agency administers. Right now, Lincoln receives approximately $4.1 million of those funds. TDA, or Transportation Development Act regulations, allow Lincoln, if there's no unmet transit needs, to use those funds for other purposes such as streets and roads repair, which Lincoln historically has done because we have not determined a lot of unmet transit needs in this area. So again, if Lincoln wants to, I would say, advance some of these service proposals or recommendations, there could be potential for Lincoln to pay for those services out of those local transportation funds that are right now being diverted to streets and roads purposes. Other than that, the other thing I'd like to note is that of that $1.1 million that I talked about in terms of annual cost to the City of Lincoln for transit services, Placer County Transit actually deducts credits the City of Lincoln for any alternative funds that they receive before Lincoln actually pays for those services. So in fiscal year 23-24, while the service cost over $1 million to provide, I think Lincoln paid roughly $450,000 for that service because there was a series of credits, whether they be fare revenues or state or federal grants, that Placer County Transit deducts from that cost and ultimately then charges Lincoln for the difference. And so that will continue in perpetuity, as I understand it. And in rough estimates, I've talked to Placer County Transit staff about this. Lincoln is looking at approximately $633,000 in average credits moving forward over the next 3 years. So again, if you're looking at implementing some of these service plan proposals, then you could essentially count on some credits to reduce some of those extra costs as well. So with that, this does conclude my presentation. Again, thank you for having me this evening, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Bring it to the council. Do you have any questions?
On the dial-a-ride, do you have any statistics as to, where they're going or requests for that? Do you have that?
Yeah, so in general terms, I wouldn't say I have the specifics with me right now, but what we see as hotspots for the dial-a-ride, Central Lincoln is one of the hotspots. Some of the, I would say, medical facilities here in Lincoln, Kaiser and others, are some hotspots. Grocery stores we've seen as some of the hotspots. And we actually see a big hotspot with the dial-a-ride in Sun City, Lincoln. We are getting a lot of users coming from Sun City that are using the dial-a-ride service for their travel within Lincoln. Thanks.
Is
Yeah.
there-
Have you ever thought about a commuter run into downtown Sacramento?
In terms of an actual commuter service, the closest we have, of course, is that Rapid Link project that I talked about. The feasibility of bringing it all the way into Sacramento with the cost of that would most likely have to be, it would have to be further examined for its ultimate feasibility, because by connecting to that light rail line, we're not paralleling that existing light rail service, which also runs to downtown Sacramento. And so we've thought about it. At this time, it's not determined to be a feasible service to run all the way to downtown Sacramento, but to connect to downtown via the light rail. But it's something we can continue to look at.
To Mike, I ask because I don't recall, so Dial-A-Ride is heavily subsidized. I think that the riders pay a couple of bucks and we cover the rest, which is a pretty significant amount. I
Correct.
don't remember, do you have to qualify to be able to use Dial-A-Ride? Or is it just wide open to anybody regardless of
Public
their
use.
ability to otherwise pay for themselves?
For Lincoln, it's available to the general public. If you are transferring on the Dial-A-Ride service to other parts of the region outside of Lincoln, that's when there's a qualification that comes into play, where if you want a one-seat ride, you have to be Americans with Disability Act certified to get a one-seat ride to other parts of the region outside of Lincoln on Dial-A-Ride. But if you are using it as a member of the general public and do not have ADA certification, you can only take that Dial-A-Ride within Lincoln. Otherwise, you have to transfer to another bus once you leave the city boundaries. And yes, it is heavily subsidized by state and federal and local grants.
I think that's a conversation we're going to have among ourselves along the way as we move forward. So obviously, one of our biggest concerns, and I think you've had very good conversations from what I understand with our staff, is the loss of those LTF dollars that historically have gone to our roadways when there have been no on-met transit needs. It sounds like, based on communication we got from the city manager today, that staff is today more comfortable than they were a few days ago. So we'll continue to have those conversations and see how that goes. I guess where that leads me is, as a member of the PCTPA board, I don't recall that there are any on-met transit needs, but we're making recommendations of additional service. So how does that fit together?
That is a very good question, Councilmember Joyner. And one of the things to clarify too is the annual unmet transit needs process has some very strict criteria. And one of the criteria, it's one thing to say something is an unmet transit need. It's another thing as part of the criteria to evaluate of whether or not it's reasonable to meet. You are correct that our board has not determined collectively that there are unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet at this time. However, it does not negate the fact that there might be actual needs out there. They just don't meet some of the reasonable to meet criteria. One of the criteria as part of reasonable to meet is, does it align with short range or long range transit plans? This comprehensive operational analysis is similar or akin to a short range transit plan. And so I would say by our board looking at this, there could be in the future some determinations that maybe there is some reasonableness to some of these unmet transit needs. However, again, with that being said, it's ultimately still up to the city of Lincoln in partnership with Placer County Transit to determine for your own jurisdiction what you are comfortable with providing. And so that's where it takes it completely outside of the PCTPA board in that process.
Understood. I appreciate that. So this is probably going to go a little out into the weeds, and I apologize for this if I understand this correctly. A lot of the funding for transit currently coming from the federal government has a cap to the population of the county of 500,000. Placer County is rapidly rushing towards that. I don't want us to get out over our skis and make commitments for which the funding is going to dry up on us a few years down the road. Any thoughts about that?
So to clarify on what you're referring to, under the Transportation Development Act, which is again, a large funder of these services that are provided today, Transportation Development Act, or TDA, regulations state that if a county crosses 500,000 in population, the urbanized areas of that county are required to utilize all of their LTF and STA funding for transit only, and no consideration anymore can be given to other purposes such as streets and roads. So what that does is when Placer County crosses 500,000, if the regulations stay current and do not change, Lincoln would no longer be able to divert those LTF funds to other purposes and would have to use them for public transit only.
That could present a challenge. I guess the other question I have that rose from your comments, and again, I really appreciate the presentation, very thorough. As we move forward, Lincoln continues to grow. What I heard you say was that there will be no fixed transit routes into the western portion of the city, Village 5, Village 7. Is that a decision you've made? Is that a decision we've made? If it's a decision we've made, we need to have some conversations with those developers before we get much farther down the road.
To clarify and to answer your question, it's a recommendation that growth in the immediate future, this plan is really looking out roughly 5 to 8 years. That's what the COA, once implemented, will put into service play. We will have a short-range transit plan that comes into play after this that is another process and a separate project. But all that to be said is initially, we are not recommending fixed route services into the western portion of Lincoln because we feel that the dial-a-ride service, by expanding a little more of that capacity, could better serve that area and get more bang for your buck than getting a new fixed route service route out there at this time. Maybe in the future, as more development happens and we're able to analyze this again in the next 5 to 8 years, that may change. But for now, we're not recommending fixed route service in those areas. It'd still be served by the dial-a-ride.
Understood. So I guess my question to staff would be, is that something we should be discussing with developers given the impacts of their projects on that transit demand?
Yeah, for sure. Because one of the things Mike and I kind of discussed is, especially like related to the park and ride, is our perspective. Matt and Vin and I and Christian, we're all on this call and are concerned about some of these areas where we just feel like it's really not an area that's activated that we feel like is going to get used. You know, what's the point in investing money in it? And then as we talked through it with Mike a little bit more, is zooming out a few hundred feet, we started thinking about the fact that, well, it isn't today, but does that mean it always won't be? And I just don't know the answer to that. I mean, there's development down that way as well that maybe, so the answer to your question is yes. We need to be having those discussions.
That's all I have for the moment.
You mentioned well-performing lines. What's the definition of well-performing line? Is it financial? The fare recovery helps and it's cheaper per passenger trip. So it's financial, it's not.
It's all of the above, Mr. Mayor. So what we did when we looked at those performance metrics and those objectives and how we evaluated these new service proposals, and a lot of this is explained in the documentation, but in summary, we looked at what is the most summary bang for your buck that you're going to get that's the most cost efficient and effective at gaining ridership route that we could propose as a consideration for enhancements to the City of Lincoln service. So it goes into, you know, what can get your most ridership for the least amount of dollars.
Your survey data, what granularity is that geographically? In other words, you put up people want, people need. I assume that's all of Placer County because that's your job. What is the Lincoln-specific information of wants and needs? Do we have unmet needs that maybe other parts of the county don't have? I'm interested in that. I'm interested in how this short-term plan that's going to cost us a lot of money dovetails to a long-term plan, which is really going to be efficient. I mean, the use of technology, microtransit in particular, you know, thought about it. Is that in the, is PCTPA looking at that in the 5-year and beyond plan? And does this dovetail into it, or no? It's just a stopgap for 5 years.
Those are all very good questions. I'm going to try to take each question piece by piece, and correct me if I get anything wrong. The first question is, what have we heard from the city of Lincoln that's specific to what these recommendations are? I would say that in summary, what we've heard from Lincoln is trying to, for the transit rider population, is trying to get to more services provided in Roseville and Sacramento faster and better, frankly, more direct, I would say. That's kind of the summary of the comments we've heard from Lincoln, and those have come from all parts of Lincoln. They've also come specifically from our senior community that's looking to access medical centers in Roseville, like Sutter and Kaiser complexes. To address your second question of what are we looking at in addition to all of this, the short-range transit plan project, which will start after the COA is done in September and October, that will look at further implementing this plan over the next 5 to 8 years, feeding into how does it feed into long-range planning? And yes, technology solutions like microtransit, other things like open source fare payment, which is essentially using your credit card to board the bus, which we don't have today. We're looking at that. Fare integration to make sure that people are paying the same thing when they cross boundaries versus the different kinds of fares that we're looking at. All of that will be examined in the future. And I will say that right now, actually, Lincoln's Dial-A-Ride service does employ microtransit technology, which is your mobile phone app based through the Go South Placer app. And you can hail your phone just like, or excuse me, hail your ride on a transit system on your phone, just like an Uber or Lyft, but you have to negotiate, a transit window, which can be, different than Uber and Lyft.
Okay, you said that the driving need is transportation from someplace in Lincoln to Sutter Medical Center, Kaiser Medical Center, the Galleria. I think that's what you said. That's what people really want.
Yeah, and Sun City wanting more access to other parts of Lincoln. Yeah.
Okay. I can see how the plan satisfies the Sun City people wanting the rest. I don't see what you projected us to spend extra money on that accomplishes, or maybe I didn't understand what I read, that accomplishes I've got to get to Sutter Hospital for transfusion.
Sure. So let me, if I may, going back to this slide right here, one of the things that helps accomplish that is actually the recommendation to improve the Route 20 service frequency from 60 to 30 minutes. That means that a bus for that Route 20 would be connecting Lincoln to Rockland and Roseville every 30 minutes while it operates. Right now, it's only every hourly. So that gives people more options to get to and from the Roseville area. I will also say that the Rapid Link project, when that comes into play in spring of next year, that will also be running on a frequent 30-minute cycle. If we stagger the two, Route 20 and the Rapid Link project, which most likely we will, that has not been finalized yet, but that's something we're looking at as operators. And that's being operated by the city of Roseville coming here into Lincoln. That service, if staggered, could provide riders essentially from the park and ride facility every 15 minutes a bus from Lincoln to the south portions of Placer County all the way down to the Watt I-80 light rail station. So
Okay,
those are
but-
providing some of those more frequent connections.
Okay, it makes stops other than the light rail system and
That's
that
correct.
wasn't clear.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I thank you very much.
So I lied.
As
I've got
I
a
said,
couple
we
more.
need,
I've got a couple more if I
Pardon?
may. I just said I lied. I've got a couple more.
uh,
Yeah, very quickly.
yeah, or should I go out to public?
We can go to the
And-
public first, sure.
Does the public have any questions on this? Yes, please come up and ask.
Hi, my name is James. I didn't fill out a card, but comment on this. There's a lot of talk about running through the park and ride lot. So my question would be for the police department, what are we doing to secure the park and ride lot? Currently, there's nothing there. It's just pavement and lines on the ground. So if I was to leave my vehicle there for 12 hours, we know, that's kind of a hot spot. What are we doing about that?
So park and rides typically in the state of California, those are overseen by Caltrans, and CHP has jurisdiction. So this park and ride is a little unique, and there's a little bit of a partnership between the city and Caltrans to install it. And we do provide services there. If we get a call for service, we go and handle the call for service. We do patrol it. Industrial is a bit of a hot spot, so we're up and down that all the time. But as far as installing cameras or anything like that, that'd be a conversation we'd have to have with Caltrans for some more harder security out there.
And then related to that, again, being dropped off in that lot, let's say I came from central Lincoln or north or west, and I get dropped off in that lot, and now I have to wait there for an unknown amount of time to get a connector down into Roseville or further on. What are we doing about personal comfort, and other accommodations? Are there benches, chairs, coverings, heaters, lights? If we're going to drop people there and let them stand there for, an hour today when it's 110 degrees outside in the sun, is that feasible, or what can be done? Again, it's not just a Lincoln, city of Lincoln, but if that's the proposal by Transportation Commission that we drop people there, I think we should take into consideration what that actually means to the human condition. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions or to respond to the gentleman's comments about the
Let
parking.
me respond to him and then we'll go.
Sure. So very good comments. And I think those are discussions, those are actual discussions that our staff, as well as City of Lincoln staff and our public transit operators have been having. I think to the gentleman's point, yes, there would be value to adding passenger amenities such as bus shelters, trash cans, potentially even portable restroom units, that sort of thing. Of course, there's funding associated with that. And so that's something that our entity, PCTPA, works with our region's operators to determine different sources of funding that could fund those ideas. So again, it's being discussed right now. If we are to, what I would say, activate that site more than it is right now and to utilize it for our transfer locations, those things are being discussed.
Well,
Well, those concerns actually touched on some of mine. I guess my first question surrounding that is my understanding currently is that Caltrans does not list the park and ride on its inventory list. So who owns it?
We're actually looking into that now. Our GIS maps are inconclusive. I just sent a formal request, written request today to Caltrans. I sent an informal request to their mapping division. And we looked for both the maintenance agreement and the parcel map. So we're trying to coordinate with Caltrans.
Yeah, the only thing I could add to that is Caltrans does, as far as I know, Caltrans owns that. They approached us a couple years ago about us taking over responsibility and maybe even title to it and maintenance of it. And at least my perspective at the time was that I'm not interested in that burden, given that it's not really being used and their investment in it has been minimal. The joke, which really isn't a joke, is that the most use I've seen at that facility was that there was a few weeks ago, there was a little league team practicing pitching out on the hot pavement. So, my understanding generally from Caltrans is they like to offload that, which would be fine. But I think to the gentleman's comments, we'd like to see that, but we'd also like to see them invest in it a little bit so it's a usable facility. Because he's right, I wouldn't park my car there for 12 hours.
Well, actually, that feeds back around again to the amenities portion of that, rather than, and if we're going to do this, if we're going to set up a bus rapid transit line going all the way down to light rail and one day, hopefully all the way into Sacramento, don't we need to start talking about this as next generation transit and set up effectively what a station that would be similar to a light rail station? If we're treating this as a rubber wheeled version of light rail, and it should be that, and that's a very hefty expenditure. Who would cover that? Can we get Caltrans to cover that before they turn it over to us? I don't know the answers to those questions. I don't know that you do at this point either, but.
Can I provide one clarification to that? So one of the things I did not mention is that Rapid Link project is a pilot service. It's a pilot program that we have funded for 3 years. After that 3 years, we have not determined its future.
Which
and
is
the
why you're
funding for
thinking
it.
temporary
That's correct.
features rather than permanent. And
That is
it's-
correct.
And is that because that project is essentially a settlement to the lawsuit?
That
we
was
don't
one of the
have.
mitigation measures, yes, for the widening of 65.
So if we assume that lawsuit didn't exist, would bus rapid transit be on our list?
That's a very good question that I would say I would answer to the nature of, as a pilot, this can address some of the comments that we hear on a recurring basis of connections, faster and more frequent and more integrated connections for transit riders between Lincoln, Roseville, and Sacramento. So this is what that pilot actually does satisfy. It's not just a mitigation measure, but it is a kind of, I would say, test to see how much demand is there really for these services that we keep hearing over and over each year. As a sustainable service, I would say that's what the pilot will determine as well, is do we get enough ridership to say that it will be worth the cost that we have secured funding for right now?
That leads me into my next question. How are you calculating your projected additional ridership?
So in terms of the additional ridership, we do look at land uses surrounding the areas. We look at the induced, I would say, if we're offering a more frequent service, there are some general assumptions and industry standards that we can assume that if you increase ridership, there is a level, or excuse me, if you increase frequency on a transit route, there is a level of demand that comes with that because there is a convenience factor that riders will tend to be attracted to. And so we look at a combination, it's not easy to explain, but we look at a combination of land use factors, the way that routes are constructed, the way that they run, and their run convenience, I would say. And that then ultimately determines a very conservative estimate of what we could get out of future ridership, as well as the growth that's happening in that area.
I don't know if you know just off the top of your head, what percentage of Lincoln's population rides public transit?
On an annual basis, there's a little over 46,000 people that ride transit on an annual basis in Lincoln. So I don't know
Those
what,
are not
Trips.
unique riders.
yeah, I don't know, I'm sorry, those are transit rides, not riders unique. I don't know what percentage, it's probably pretty low, probably below 10% of the population utilizes transit. I would say that you see those rides, those 46,000 rides being generated from the people that need it the most, senior people with disabilities or those with no cars. I don't have that number off the top of my head, I apologize.
It's okay. If it were me and I were trying to project what I believe additional routes would add, I'd take that running percentage and the number of people I figured were going to be created by that new development and assume that level of ridership. So I thought maybe that was how you were getting to your projections. But okay, I'll stop there.
Mayor, we do have a couple hands raised on Zoom. Steve Norman, please go ahead. Steve, please unmute yourself. We'll go on to the next person, Lena Lebowski. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is Steve Norman with CNA Engineering. Sorry. And I'm here to answer any questions regarding this time extension.
Different item. We're on the first. Yeah,
No, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
on item.
that's okay.
My bad. Sorry.
Lena, please unmute your, yes. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. I want to let you know that Lincoln Hills really appreciates the Dial Ride program. They appreciate it a lot, but there is one aspect of it that is missing for them, and that is evening hours. And I'm not talking 7 nights a week, maybe Thursday through Saturday, have maybe extended hours, maybe three nights a week. Is that ever a possibility, or are we dreaming about that? Thank you.
No other hands are raised, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. What kind of evening hours for Sun City people? I mean, I'm in bed by 8 o'clock. So go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you, Lena. Go ahead, man.
To address that, that's something we have heard actually as part of our process. We did look at what it would cost to offer evening hours. At this time, it doesn't seem like the anticipated ridership demand and the boardings would be sufficient enough to where we would recommend that as a enhancement option. Again, what we're recommending is very conservative, and it's trying to get the most riders for the least amount of cost. And we don't see necessarily that sustainability just yet with the demand for evening service to recommend that at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, I have one real other quick question, if you don't mind. I mean, it was spurred by something that Councilmember Joyner said, and also James, with this pilot project that you're looking to put in. Sometimes with a pilot, to see if it's going to work or not going to work, you do have to take into consideration the amenities or the whatever to that, and specifically to that specific location. And I just wanted to know if they're taking into consideration that, because if you don't put anything or any effort or into that location, then how do you know how well this pilot's going to produce? You know what I mean?
That's a very good question. It's almost like the chicken and the egg argument, right?
Yeah.
And I think for this pilot, again, we are still having active conversations with City of Lincoln staff. We are still actively talking to our transit operators. We at PCTPA will continue to actively look for alternative sources of funding that would not necessarily have to come from, say, Lincoln or the operators, but what can we use on our state or federal funds that we get and we administer that could go towards what I would call basic passenger amenities to be able to provide support for the pilot service. So we're looking into that, but that's a very good comment.
Good, thank you. Yeah, because I think that would be super important to find out whether or not the pilot would be successful or not. Because if it's not attractive enough for someone to want to, then you could have nobody that takes advantage of it, or maybe 1 or 2 people, and it wouldn't be a true representation of what it would do. Thanks.
So we, the city of Lincoln, frequently anymore, buy prefab restrooms for the parks that we plumb for them, they bring it in, drop it down on a foundation, we're good to go. Is there a module that has restrooms, air-conditioned waiting area that transit systems typically could use?
I don't know at this time what would be appropriate for that site. I think that would be a conversation with Lincoln staff.
But does it exist? Does that type of module exist?
I would say yes. I haven't seen it used a lot. And when I say restrooms, one of the biggest things that I think when we look at transit services, one of the key factors is the drivers of those transit service. I've seen a lot of restrooms established for drivers and not necessarily passengers, and we're talking in large systems, including Sacramento area, as well as the Bay Area and that sort of thing. I would say modular or mobile bathroom, restroom units with air conditionings do exist. I don't know if that level of scale would be appropriate for this site, considering it's a pilot, but we can look into it.
And if it's going to be like somebody's example, which was a light rail station, I don't remember light rail stations having anything other than covered seating, because you don't want to get into the problem with, like we did at McBean Park with the restroom. So, and people aren't there for that long a period of time. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, particularly if you're accomplishing the 2 runs, which gets you down, if I heard you, to 15 minutes.
And my accommodations, though, what I was more concerned with had to do with safety, and what had to do with them feeling comfortable to be able to utilize that spot. I mean, because.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time this
And
evening.
we spent enough time on that. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is asked for at this time on non-agenda items within the subject matter expertise and jurisdiction of the City Council. I have 1 card, and then I will ask for people just out of the audience. I have a card for Elizabeth Jansen. Such good handwriting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council and city staff, my name is Elizabeth Jansen. I live at 412 I Street here in Lincoln, and it's I Street that I kind of wanted to talk about for a few minutes, and I appreciate your time. I Street is in dire need of repair, and it does not come as a surprise to anyone. We've known that for quite some time, but I guess my sole purpose is to just go on record and say, we have been patient enough. We have waited a very long time. And again, I want to represent those maybe 90 homes that are on I Street, which goes north and south from First Street to Nicholas. That doesn't count the houses that are on the corners, Methodist Church, that sort of thing. But I know that it's in the works. I have been told, we even had a visit from a city engineer telling us that it was going to be a 7-month-long project, that it was very imminent, but you're going to have to let us be a little skeptical. You're going to have to let us not be excited until we see that start to happen. If I can let you know, I grew up in this home. The house was built in 1951. I'm giving my age away, but that's okay. I'm really old. I lived across the street until the house was built. I was 3 years old. I walked across the street, and that's where I grew up. I rode my trike, my bike, I drove my car, had kids' parades on I Street. And I'm only saying this so that you'll understand that I realize what I Street is. I've seen it for a long time. We were told in 2016, or I was told by Ray Leftwich, that it would be done in 2016. We were told that it would be done in 2023. My father went to the city council in 1985 to ask that it be repaired. There was a huge hole in front of my house. There was even a former city councilman who parked in front of my home, got out of his car, and almost fell down. I almost wish he had. No, I don't. I'm sorry. But my father died in 2009, never seeing that hole fixed and never seeing the street repaired. He even asked if he could financially fix that hole in front of his house, and he was denied. So it's been a long time coming. And I will tell you that there's almost blight on I Street. It's getting worse and worse. And I personally feel like, you know how you get a haircut and you're inspired to get a new shirt? You know how you're inspired if your neighbor mows their lawn, you want to mow your lawn? We're not inspired. We're embarrassed. And that doesn't seem fair. So it's not only messing with our psyche, it's messing with our property values. People are bailing on I Street. Flippers are taking the homes.
Elizabeth, you're past the time.
I'm sorry. I would just like,
I'm really sorry.
I would just like that consideration for I Street. And I would like that consideration for all of what I affectionately call Village Zero. It's our roots. We got to take care of them. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Obvious question, where is it in the CIP? When can we see this?
So you might recall that there's really two issues here. The first is that we did 3 roadways in the downtown area the year before last in coordination with a sort of a 10-year water line replacement project we're doing all throughout the downtown. The next 3 streets, I understand, are H, I, and J. And one of the things that drives you all crazy is when we do a roadway project and then we tear it up some period of time thereafter. Drives me crazy too. So our idea is that project, we're going to have to come to council and get supplemental funds to address the roadway. Because here's the second issue I'll just mention, and I don't think we need to go into a full engineering analysis that either one of those two gentlemen in the middle could do. But Elizabeth is correct that the neglect of that roadway has created a worse situation than otherwise would have happened had it just been maintained periodically over 20 or 30-year period, where the pavement condition index is so low that we could go in and slurry those roads, but it would last a very short period of time and you'd back to essentially what you have because the base of it is compromised. And so it's really a grind down and reconstruct kind of project, which compared to a slurry, what, Vin, 5-10 times as expensive, give or take?
Yeah, at least 10 times.
Yeah. So, and that's the correct way to really address it. So what we'd like to do as part of this water line project is get those lines installed, and then we'll have to seek supplemental funding since the road will be tore up anyway, a full reconstruct of that roadway. And while the 7-month thing is irritating and it's going to be very frustrating for the community, it's really the only way to create a roadway that can work. And I don't know, do you know, Vin, where we're at on, are we bidding that?
Yeah, we're about to advertise the $5 million water main project. So, I mean, in a perfect world, you try to coordinate that, right? You want to take care of your underground water main replacement projects first, because, just in the process of replacing those water mains, you're going to cut up the road. And it doesn't make sense to repave the road and have to come back and cut it up. It's a very difficult thing to do because our water enterprise funds are restricted, right? We can only utilize that to fix the water mains. We can't use water enterprise funds to fix roads. And Ms. Elizabeth is absolutely correct. I've done similar work in other jurisdictions where when you do come through and resurface the street, it really, really brings up the neighborhood. Even if, I mean, there's different levels of treatment. Slurry seal, Fox seal is least costly, but then there's other things you can do. What I like to do in the past, and I've talked to Matt about this, is a Cape seal where you apply a rubber chip and then you slurry on top. That can be utilized in certain locations and at a significant cost savings instead of reconstructing the road. If you have to reconstruct the road, you have to think of, basically, it's $1 million per lane mile. And if you take that approach, there's not enough money. The LTF is what, less than $4 million a year. If the county's, transportation tax passes, we're only getting an incremental amount. So even with that approach, we have to be really strategic in how we spend whatever money we have for road maintenance. What I've done in the past is, try to take a systematic approach. You would break up and try to attack the arterial roads with the most traffic volumes, come up with a long-term plan, identify the needs, even though you don't have the funding, and then you break up the neighborhoods. And let's say you divide up the city into 10 different areas or zones. Your subdivisions probably have CFDs in place that can take care of that. And then we would treat this village zero and come up with the best solution, most cost-effective option, right? But again, that's something that Matt and I have talked about, that perhaps later in the year, in the
I think for
future.
Elizabeth, she's less concerned about the how and more concerned about the when.
Right.
I had the water pipeline driving this is 3 streets. All 3 streets need full reconstruction. What is
yes.
the grade of, in the management plan? Are those 10%?
Matt was estimating between 20 and 30 out of 100.
Okay.
So about, it could get worse, but not much worse. The way I like to say it is, if you're a lady and you like to wear high heels and you walk across the street and you're in flats, then we got a problem. So what I think we can commit to, and we'll coordinate with Elizabeth, I've been talking with her about this for a while now, is that project's going to bid, as Vin said. Let us look at what resources we have, even if we have to divert them from other projects, and give council some options about supplementing that project on the roadway component so we can address these now. And it'll mean that some other projects suffer in the short term, but that'll become a value decision that the council can give us direction on.
I think it's, what is it, pound wise, dollar foolish, forget the stating, but when you come back, I'd like to see the analysis that when, we let these streets in the city get to the 10, 20% problem, to where this isn't, my point is, we're going to see more of this. We need the way to, when the street is at this level, this is the optimum solution, short of full reconstruction. Maybe it isn't possible to do anything except for, adding 3 layers of patches on it is, I don't think, acceptable at all, because you have to think for the long term. So when you come back for the supplemental funding, I'd like to make sure that we spent a lot of time in analyzing the optimum solution.
Maybe I think what Christine is about to say is we're going a little bit beyond where we should be. But what we'll commit to do is 2 things. We'll get in touch with Elizabeth and we'll brief you on that project and how we can supplement it. But separately, maybe what we do is we come back and we just sort of do a whole session on pavement management, our PCI levels throughout town, the fact that we have 250 lane miles in this community of roads that all of them need some treatment or another. And then just the reality for the community to understand of what very little resources we get to actually work on roads and how we prioritize those. So Kyle, just kind of work off the same page. That works. Okay.
clarify one thing for me. If the water department is cutting up the roadway, water department should have to rebuild that portion of the roadway, yes.
I would like to add just a few of my thoughts on roads. One thing to put the funding situation into perspective, to maintain our PCI around town is about $10 million a year. The SB1 funds provide about 1.3 million, and we couple those with utility projects, grant opportunities, other things where we can leverage those dollars, which leaves very little for like this proactive maintenance effort. So prioritization's extremely important, and Vin and I have talked extensively. His new engineer is actually building a long-term plan for us right now, and at the director level, the staff haven't provided it to Vin and I for review, but they have been actively working on that. And we do have really good engineering team that does think about leveraging those dollars, coupling those with grant opportunities and utility projects. One of the things that set us back, and we mentioned it during our robust outreach during the utility rate increase discussions, was how we were doing utility projects in the past and we were using road dollars and patch paving dollars that were coming out of our street fund, right? Those were street maintenance priorities, but because the utilities were in such tight financial constraints, we were actually using those funds to do those water line impact mitigations that Paul's referencing. When a utility does impact the road, there is an opportunity there to mitigate those impacts and use those utility dollars to restore the road to the pre-polluted condition. There's some discretion there, but there is an opportunity for that, and that's what we're talking about. And Araceli Casares, our engineering manager that works and reports to Vin, she's very well aware of the H.I.N.J. Street project. She's already expressed to me, I think before Vin got here, that there isn't enough funding in that project to fully restore all the roads because there's quite a bit of water line that's going in. But she had already planned on leveraging as much of the SB1 money as possible to do the max amount of restoration, but there's not enough. And that's what Sean spoke to. So we're well aware it's a really tough challenge, and we try to be as efficient as possible with those transportation dollars. And the road tax would effectively almost triple our SB1 funds. It's about $2.7 million a year if it were to be approved. And right now our SB1's 1.3. So it'd be kind of a substantial increase. Even though it's a nominal amount, we get so little funding, it'd be a big deal for the city of Lincoln roads.
So I appreciate all that information. What I was really going for was Vin had suggested that utility dollars can't be used for road replacement, but if the utility is the one who tore up the road, utility needs to pay to fix the road.
Right. It can be used to restore.
This is non-agendized items.
Right.
We really need to move on at this
That's
point.
true.
I'm not doing my job if I didn't speak up.
Thank you.
None online, Mayor. Thank you.
Paul. If so, if not, I will, how about staff? Public,
Any member of the public wishing to pull an item?
any member of the public wish to pull an item?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
I will accept a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Carl Skint.
Yes. Now we go on to public hearings. We're going to 9A, conduct a public hearing, determine that the project qualifies for categorical exemption under section 153.15 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and is thereby exempt from further environmental review, and adopt a resolution 2024-156 approving the 219 East 8th Street tentative parcel map time extension. Right.
Good evening, City Council members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Efren Sanchez, Senior Planner with Community Development Department. The item we have before you is a 3-year time extension request for the previously approved tentative parcel map known as 219 East 8th Street, submitted by Jackie Run. A little bit of context, in 2022, City Council originally approved the tentative parcel map to divide a 0.9 acre project site into 4 residential lots with an average lot size of 8,000 square feet. In March, the applicant submitted this time extension request in order to accommodate the future review of improvement plans, satisfaction of the conditions of approval, and recordation of the final map. The final map is currently being processed by Development Engineering. Last month, the extension request was reviewed by the Planning Commission, who unanimously approved a resolution which recommends City Council consider approval of this time extension. The project site is located on the southeast corner of East 8th Street and South Harold Avenue. The property has a general plan land use designation of low density residential and a zoning of R1 within District 6 of the Lincoln downtown area. The applicant has shown a sustained effort to meet the requirements of the tentative parcel map by anticipating the time needed to process the recording of the final map. According to the applicant, they are requesting a time extension to complete the parcel split and the improvements as required to get the final map recorded. They are requesting 2 to 3 year extension to allow sufficient time to complete the necessary improvements and finalize the parcel split. This is the first discretionary time extension request for the tentative parcel map. According to the Lincoln Municipal Code, a total of 6 years are allowed for discretionary time extensions. In the event the final map is still in process by the time the 3-year time extension is set to expire, the applicant can request a second discretionary time extension for another 3 years. The approved map remains consistent with the applicable standards of the general plan, the subdivision ordinance, and zoning ordinance. The project complies with the Levine Act, and the applicant cited no contributions to elected officials over 250. That brings us to our recommendations. Staff recommends that the City Council conduct a public hearing, consider the information contained in the staff report and the testimony of the public, and take the following action: determine that the project qualifies for a CEQA exemption, and 2, adopt the resolution approving the 3-year time extension for the approved 219 East 8th Street tentative parcel map. So that concludes my presentation. If City Council has any questions, also the applicant is online via Zoom if you have any questions for the applicant as well.
Wish to give testimony? Anybody online?
No one is online, but I'll open it up to Steve. Steve, if you wanted to make a comment, you can unmute yourself. Doesn't look like he has a comment, Mayor.
Okay, I'll close public hearing. Bring it back for discussion or vote.
Well, I think it's very straightforward. If nobody has any comments or questions, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Second.
And second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Carl Skint.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, 9B, is to conduct a public hearing and adopt Resolution 2024-157 to adopt the proposed addendum to the already certified Village One's specific plan environmental impact report. I'm not going to do the number, certifying that the proposed Stardust project will not result in any new significant information of a substantial importance, new impacts, new immigration mitigation efforts, new or revised alternatives, or an increase in the severity of previously identified impacts. We will also adopt a resolution approving the long-term subdivision map for the proposed Stardust project and adopt Resolution 24-159, approving the small lot tentative map for project.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Michaela Noble, Assistant Planner here with the Community Development Department. Adrian Graham of Adrian Graham and Associates has been working with me on this project and will come up later on and present a few slides for you. Efren Sanchez, Senior Planner here, has also worked with me as well. And Development Engineering has also played a crucial role with this application, as they do with all map applications. The project we have before you tonight is the Stardust Project by Beazer Homes. Tonight, we'll discuss the following items pertaining to the Stardust project: the requested entitlements, the Planning Commission meeting, project components, staff findings, the environmental determination, and finally, the recommendations. The applicant, Beazer Homes, is requesting to approve a large lot tentative subdivision map and a small lot tentative subdivision map and certify an addendum to the Village 1 specific plan EIR. A development agreement is being negotiated between the city staff and the applicant and will be brought to council at a later date. In June, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and recommended with a 7-0 vote that City Council approve all entitlements related to the Stardust project. Now, a bit of context for the project. The proposed project consists of 77 acres within the Village 1 specific plan area. The project site is located along State Route 193 at McBean Park Drive and Stardust Lane. On the map above, it's highlighted in red for ease. Other Village 1 projects that have been approved or have filed an entitlement application include the following: Esplanade at Turkey Creek, Auburn Ravine Estates, Turkey Creek Estates, the Waterfront, Hidden Hills, and then Heartland at Hidden Hills, which is within Hidden Hills. Here is the proposed large lot tentative subdivision map for the Stardust project. The parcel is approximately 77 acres in size and is being proposed to be divided into large parcels based on varying land uses to provide for logical development and provide boundaries for the small lot map. And here is the small lot tentative subdivision map for Stardust. The map features 302 residential lots, open space lots, and a park and recreation lot. Residential lot sizes range from 4,500 square feet to 15,000 square feet. Oak Tree Lane will be a 2-lane road with a shared bike and NEV lane, a sidewalk along the western side of the road, and a 10-foot multi-use trail along the eastern side of the road. Residential streets will be 2 lanes with sidewalks on both sides of the street. The project satisfies the city's minimum lot sizes and typical setback requirements. With this map, the applicant has provided an alternative site layout involving the lift station, which is located right up in this northern area. If the lift station is built off-site, the alternative layout would shift the orientation of lots 210 to 213 and add a roadway that would connect this parcel to the north parcel. The project will be required to construct Oak Tree Lane from the southern project boundary north to State Route 193. The proposed project provides for a total of 302 village low-density residential units within a private gated community with a homeowners association. Preliminary floor plans would include single and 2-story homes ranging in size from 1,800 to 3,500 square feet. The project includes approximately 20 acres of open space and a 2-acre park and recreation facility. As illustrated above on the table, the acreage for each land use would vary slightly from the adopted specific plan. As outlined in the staff report, staff analyzed the proposed entitlement requests and concluded that they're consistent with the goals, policies, and intent of the city's general plan, the adopted Village 1 specific plan and general development plan, and the city's subdivision ordinance. Now I'd like to invite Adrian up here to provide some environmental information.
Thank you, Michaela. Adrian Graham, Environmental and Planning Consultant, and I prepared both the
Village One Specific Plan Program EIR and the addendum for the Stardust project that you're considering tonight. Because the Stardust project is in Village One, it falls under the umbrella of the Village One Specific Plan EIR. So when we did the environmental analysis, we were really looking to see whether or not there was something about the Stardust project or the project site that could result in new or substantially more severe impacts relative to those identified in the Village One Specific Plan. As Michaela indicated, there were some slight differences in the land use plans between Stardust and the adopted specific plan, but they were minor and wouldn't affect the environmental analysis. We also looked at the project-specific reports that were prepared for the project, including biological and cultural resource surveys, and we concluded that all of the impacts that could occur as a result of Stardust were adequately addressed in the Village One Specific Plan EIR. Consequently, we were able to prepare an addendum as the CEQA document for the project, and that's what you're being asked to consider tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. City staff has prepared conditions of approval for the large lot and the small lot tentative subdivision maps to ensure orderly and timely development and implementation of the project. Standard and project-specific conditions have been applied. The conditions of approval also include all applicable mitigation measures from the Village One Specific Plan EIR. All conditions will be subject to verification of compliance by city departments at the appropriate times prior to moving forward. The Planning Commission recommends that City Council adopt a resolution approving the addendum to the certified 2012 Village One Specific Plan EIR, adopt a resolution approving the large lot tentative subdivision map for the Stardust project, and adopt a resolution approving the small lot tentative subdivision map for the Stardust project. That concludes my presentation. The only thing I have to add is that the applicant team did submit Levine Act statements to the city and cited no contributions to any elected officials exceeding $250 within the period. Thank you.
And it actually goes beyond this project. This project is a gated private community with trails in it. It said in the plan that it was going to connect the trails to the rest of the system in Village One. How's that going to happen?
Sure. So let me pull up the trail system from, let's see. If IT could bring up the slide. Perfect. So kind of to orient you, this kind of upside down L-shaped project right here is Stardust. So that's the parcel. So this green line up here signifies it's a concept of where the open space trail will be, which I will refer back to the subdivision map in a minute to show you where that is. There's also this orange path right here, which is Oak Tree Lane, and it shows the sidewalk connections between. So this eastern side of the trail connects with this open space. It'll be a 10-foot multi-use trail that serves as a sidewalk and a trail to the open space, which that'll connect south into potentially, this is the Level Ranch property right here, which we don't have an application for at the moment, which will connect to open space here and the communities within. For this open space trail in the north, it'll connect west to other open spaces, which we don't have any maps yet, so we can't dictate what those trails are going to look like, but it is connected, and I'll bring up the actual map for you to kind of show you where those trails are. So again, this is the northern portion of the project boundary, so this is that green line, this kind of caterpillar-esque shape. That'll be your trail that'll be built in and connected to other open space in the west. As well, it connects to Oak Tree Lane. And you can take these sidewalks down, cross the street, and get to this open space trail right here and continue south further into Village One.
Okay. I think
Is that on the outside or the inside?
Hmm?
Is that on the outside or the inside of the gated community?
So this will be a public road. It's Oak Tree Lane. So that's on the outside as well as this open space trail. This will be outside of the community as well, which will be, all of it will be
So
accessible to the
there
public.
is no,
Yeah, no,
with it from the gated community,
correct,
there isn't any,
correct. There's
Okay.
no, private only trails that are being proposed, all public here.
right, they're not interfering with the rest of the trail.
Correct. And we do have, if IT could pull up the map again, just another extra connection point that was added right down in here. This is kind of a 6-foot walkway that will eventually lead way if a park is developed, which that's the plan at this southern parcel, to where it'll be accessible by the private community, but the public can't get in through that way.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any questions from the audience? Any
So this is a
comments?
public hearing, Mayor, and we did have one speaker card.
Pardon me?
It's a public hearing, and we did have one
Oh,
speaker
okay,
card,
okay.
yes.
I'll open the public hearing. Any member of the public wish to give testimony?
Hello, I'm Mayor and Council. First time I've ever been to one of these, so I didn't know what to expect. So if I could I get a slide back up there? Well, this one's fine.
Okay, there you go.
So we currently reside on Stardust Lane. We have a 10-acre parcel that we are unable to divide. And then we are going to be looking at multiple units. And from the previous slide that was shown, it was a little change from what I saw on, it was supposed to be the Village Country Estates that was
Sure.
right here. And it looks like it's now changed to.
Absolutely.
So from this, sorry, I'm just learning this
No
because I've
worries.
been. Yes, so on this slide that sorry, I'm not prepared because I didn't know this was available to do. So this is no longer going to be all. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So again, first time we've been here. My family's here also. We're just new to this and didn't know what this project entailed. Our concern is just obviously the complete landscape change that's going to be there, you know. We bought our farm, 10 acres to live on, to farm, and the other farm area was right there, beautiful scenery, and now we're going to be looking at the back of homes. So kind of sad, you know, people buy in Lincoln to have country feel, and now we're going to feel like we're back in the suburbs.
Thank
And,
you.
the other question we have too is whether Stardust is the accessible point, because it's a 1-lane road. That's a dead end. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to address the quicker question first, no, Stardust Lane is not going to be accessible by the public. There is an EVA lane that runs through the the eastern portion of the project, so residents cannot access that gate and use that road in order to get into the subdivision. Or, excuse me, yeah. So Stardust Lane will just remain a private road for you guys. The
So,
other go ahead.
Mayor, this is a public hearing. Did you want to go ahead and take all the testimony first and then have staff?
Guys, yes, let's do that. Any other members of the public that want to testimony?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Tony Frazier with Frazier Design Group. I'm here with Beazer, working on Stardust. Very excited to bring another project in Village One after a long journey. We really appreciate first to start by thanking staff. Michaela did awesome job, and you know we can list every member from Christian to Vin to Indeed, everybody was working together to get us here. And the fact that we got 7-0 vote at the planning commission addresses that. So I really appreciate it. We're looking forward to your yes vote and looking forward to move forward with this project. I do want to address one thing. I know that we had an amendment to the specific plan where the VCEs on the east side, some of them changed. However, in recognition of, the owners to the east, if, some of you may recall that we had conditions, part of that amendment, which basically created deeper lots back into Stardust and wider lots. So if we developed it as VCE, we would be closer by 10 feet to the edge. So by doing what we're doing is we push it to the west. So yes, as a project, it is VLDR, low density, but the edge condition, that's why we have one lot is like 15,000 square feet. So those lots along the east are in recognition of the neighbors. And also the edge condition, besides the EVA, we're going to try to keep all the as is, the trees, everything to make sure that the rural appeal is there. That was critical to a city from early on, and that's being honored. So again, the trails are a jewel of this project, but also as we're building to the south and the north, these trails are going to continue and connect. And we're looking forward to implementing this project and seeing it built. And we're here to answer any question you may have.
No other
No
comments?
hands are raised, Mayor.
No hands are raised. I'll close the public hearing. No, okay.
I do think Tony addressed the other part of the question regarding the VCE and, VLDR change. So I think we're covered there. So if, council members, you guys have any additional comments or questions, I'm here to answer.
No more comments or questions? Thank you. I'll accept motion.
Once, or you want them separate?
Our practice has been to take them separately when it is a public hearing.
All right. Motion to adopt resolution 2024-150 to adopt the proposed addendum to the certified 2012 Village One Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report. I think that's all I need to read.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Carl Skint.
Yeah.
Motion to adopt resolution 2024-158, approving the large lot tentative subdivision map for the proposed Stardust project.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Carl Skint.
And adopt resolution 2024-159, approving the small lot tentative subdivision map for the proposed Stardust project.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Carl Skint.
Yes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is general business. 10A, will receive a report of the Utility Assistance Program and provide direction. Be presented by our Assistant City Manager, Nita Wack.
Good evening, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to bring this item back before you. As you're well aware, back in September of 2023, the council directed staff to initiate a utility assistance program to help our low-income utility customers with the rate increases. And at that time, the program was initially enacted for 6 months, and we came back prior to that deadline and requested an additional 6 months. As it stands now, the program is set to end at the end of September. And so based on the success of this program, we wanted to bring forward the information on the dollars expended so far, as well as get council's direction on the future of this program. It was initially created as a bridge or a gap funding to give people an opportunity to adjust to the new rates. I will say that it has been successful and that we've assisted over 600 utility customers with this subsidy, but the funding is getting low. There's about $85,000 or so left as of the end of July. And so we are looking for direction of council. First question is, do we want to continue it? do we want to end it? And once we answer that question, I have other questions for you.
Well, I think Nita threw the question out there. The very first one is this something we want to be an ongoing project? Or I'm sorry, program? Or do we want it to be what we'd originally discussed, which was a gap program that would eventually end?
Well, I think part of what she's also asking is there's $85,000 plus that are left, and should we extend what we have using those dollars that are left? And then if we say yes, it's based on the success of the program, then those dollars that are left will continue to help feed that program, but there's only 85,000 left. So if we say, yeah, we want to go ahead and extend the program, knowing that there's only 85,000 left, there's additional questions I think that she would want to have us answer.
Right.
I would say yes.
I'm perfectly good with extending the program to use up the remaining funding. It seems like so we ought to be stepping it down a bit to both wean those folks off of it, but also to be a clear indicator that the program is wrapping up.
Okay. Yep.
And that's my own thoughts.
Yeah, I agree.
Have the money for the program, I suggest we keep it for.
Well, we would have to refund the
We have
program.
2 months.
The problem with this whole thing too is the rates went up by a very substantial percentage. Us that, they had to do it because, the funds would go bankrupt if they didn't. Why they were able to get to that point, I don't, still not been explained. But yeah, I think, we should probably continue this program.
How much, question for staff, I can't remember how much ARPA money is left.
I think we held back about $600,000 that hadn't been allocated. So there's, you could continue. What we could do is we could exhaust the remaining funds, reassess sort of where we're at. Anita's customer service reps, she was telling me earlier, would prefer that this program continue in perpetuity because they don't want to be telling people it's going to be ending.
But if it is going to be ending, I think it's better for our customers if we can set a date
Yeah.
certain so that we can start to prepare them. And as Councilmember Joyner suggested, maybe a step down policy of, reducing it over a certain number of months before it's eliminated.
We could also just take kind of generalized feedback over the next number of months and kind of come back at the very end. And if council decides, hey, let's extend it another X number of months, you still have that reserve. You could
But so
tap.
it's currently scheduled to end September 30th of 2024. So at a minimum, we'd have to come back in September to request for additional time.
That's the problem is unless you take the step down approach, which could maybe get you another month, what Paul suggested, that would get you possibly another month. You reduce the amount. It also gives you a chance to start advertising. Termination of the program.
If we were to,
You can't get, based on what Nita said, you can't run out of money and say, well, we don't have any more money, so all of a sudden. So you have to have either a time certain or a time, high probability time, I guess.
Yeah.
So is that September date when you've exhausted the funds given the existing people in the program?
no, I suspect there will still be funds left at the end of September, given we're spending, at the moment, we paid out $13,892 for the month of July. We paid out a total of $119,000. For example, we could do something such as come back next month and ask council to authorize no more entries into the program. At the moment, we're still accepting applications, and if someone qualifies, they're getting the assistance dollars. So we could bring back a resolution to say the program will not be taking any more applicants. We would then know how many more dollars we have, how many more months those dollars would extend to. And we could talk about extending the program with a step-down program, so, or step-down policy.
Personally, I think that's the wise approach.
Yeah, I agree.
And we can come back next meeting with a resolution to accept no more applications and with a plan to begin to step down the amount of funds remaining to extend the program out for a certain period of time to be determined.
These dollars
So we
aren't,
have 81K, you think, at this spend rate.
The
So
spend
if you
rate,
freeze it,
probably, I mean, depending on how we step down the program, it could be 4 or 6 months, or possibly even.
6 months maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that.
quick question, though the $85,000 that we had allocated to that's not part of the 600,000 that we had. Okay.
No,
I
that
just wanted to
was,
verify.
that
That's
was
what
set
I thought.
aside before that.
What I thought. Thanks.
The initial funding. So, that consensus?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
got your direction. I think the next item on the agenda is city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to recognize someone in the room this will be her last city council meeting with the city of Lincoln, who has served, I think I heard 11 years was the number. Is that right? Her name is Lindy Childers. She's sitting behind me. She's been our engineering manager for many years, has been involved in just about every major development project that has happened over that period of time and many that preceded her. These things last a really long time. They're very complex. That requires a significant amount of work to extract the quality that the community has come to expect from our development. And so after many years with us and many years with a number of other public agencies in her public service career, she's decided to retire. I just wanted to recognize her and congratulate her because it's difficult to decide when it's time to go. And also the work that she's done will continue to last for a really, really long time. And we certainly very much appreciate you. Oh, yes. And Lindy was not interested in a bunch of fanfare or any of that, which we tried to respect, but I was joking with her before the meeting that we don't really need to follow those directions because she's leaving anyway. So congratulate her, send her a note, any of those things.
So you've got the balloon drop set up? For
Yeah, there's a carnival outside. So the second thing is a little bit more somber. Just wanted to express some condolences. Chief and some of his staff and his honor guard attended a funeral today in Vacaville for a police officer that was struck and killed during a routine traffic stop. And although it's in a prosecution now, it appears on purpose. And so horrible situation. But I think it says a lot about our department and our commitment to public safety that we take the time and go down and attend these funerals just as sort of a larger support system for the law enforcement community. His name was Matthew Bowen. And so, if you're saying prayers tonight, maybe say one for him. Two other things. Saturday, there's a back to school bash in Bierman's Plaza, and they're raising money and backpacks and any kind of back to school supplies, gift cards, folders, pencils, pens, that kind of stuff, which goes out to community members in need that might need those for their kids that are heading back to school. So if you have a chance to stop by or maybe donate something, that would be great. And finally, just to mark your calendars for the council and community, our strategic planning session is tentatively scheduled for the 8th of August. That's a Thursday. I don't have a time for you yet. Council member and staff coordination of calendars is really complex and difficult just because, as you probably hear, all these electeds sit on many boards and have lots of commitments. And so we're trying to find the right time, but it will be that day, I hope. And in preceding that on the 6th, the strategic planning consultant that we've used will be doing individual interviews with each elected and some staff here to kind of get an idea about what work product we want to focus on moving forward. We also will be doing an update. Aaron's put together sort of an update for council. I'll be sending out about what we've completed in that 2-year plan. We're 1 year into it. What important items we've knocked off and completed, and some of them we found are a little bit more complex or difficult than we thought. And so we're going to come back to council and seek some direction on other things you'd like us to focus on, or if we're going to reverse course on certain items. But overall, I was really pleased to read through it because a large percentage in a 2-year plan, we've knocked out over half of those items, and some of them are very heavy lifts. And so what that means for the city council is it gives us a lot more bandwidth to add in new strategic pursuits. So start to think about that. And community members, if you're listening, this is a process that involves you too. So if you have ideas about really important things you'd like to see us focus on over the next 2-year period, please send those to me or any other staff person that's here.
Elizabeth just did.
Yes, that I suspect that will end up on the list. And that's all I have this evening. One other thing. Aaron and I spoke with PCAR this morning, Placer County Association of Realtors. Really fun meeting. They have a really good time at those meetings. And got some pretty good feedback about all of the work that we're doing on the development side here in Lincoln, and a lot of excitement about projects that we have coming forward. And so we gave our contact information, and we'll be in touch with a lot of those folks as they start to kind of work some of those new projects that are coming into town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is council initiated business.
Mayor, I'm so sorry. I think we talked about Christine was going to get some time here to talk about homelessness, and I'm sorry, I stepped right over her, so.
I can do it now, or I can do it under information items. Would you prefer now?
No, fine.
Okay. About a couple of weeks ago, I circulated some information to council about the status of the final numbers for the city of Lincoln for the point in time count, which occurred in January of this year. And Councilmember Brown thought that it might be helpful to the community that I share some of that information that's not otherwise widely disclosed, and kind of give an update as to where we are with the city's homeless task force and some of the projects that we have underway. So I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. The point in time count was conducted at the end of January of this year. It's done annually in January of each year, and it is a HUD mandate where the cities and counties send out volunteers, and we take counts of those members of our community that are homeless, and we also try to collect some statistical data about ethnicity, upbringing, veteran status, those types of things. So this year, Placer County in general showed a decline in homelessness. The city of Lincoln also showed a decline in our homeless population, with our final point in time count number being attributed to the city of Lincoln of 43. But I'm really pleased to announce that according to our code enforcement staff, who is out on the creek interacting with our homeless population, which is where the vast majority of them reside, at least 2 days a week, oftentimes 3 days a week, also working with Lincoln Police Department and our Adopt a Creek volunteers, that number has dwindled significantly, and they're estimating approximately 25 individuals that are now identifying as homeless in our community in that regard. That number, I say approximately because that could change from day to day given their arrest status and those types of issues. But I think there are a number of reasons to explain why such a significant decrease. One is the city's pilot project, which is our 3 trailer homes that we're working in conjunction with our faith community, have taken 4 individuals off the creek to date. And we'll be coming back to the council sometime this fall to workshop that project and figure out how we sustain this project going forward, given our success, how it's funded, who it's staffed by, and that type of thing. So look forward to that conversation, and hopefully having some of our successful project participants here to share their stories and some information with you as well to take into consideration. Another has been, frankly, given the focus of enforcement that the Homeless Task Force in Lincoln has implemented, we were very careful to develop a strategic operating plan that was in compliance with the Martin versus Boise case. Of course, most people are aware of the SCOTUS decision in the Johnson versus Grants Pass case, which was kind of progeny of the Martin case, but had to do with the tools that are available to cities in their toolkits to respond to homelessness in their communities. I sort of want to dispel the community's feeling that, well, that's great. Now that we have this decision, you can just go out and arrest them all and send them to jail. Well, that's not really a practical solution for a number of reasons. First and foremost, being, it's not humane. These are individuals that have issues that we can work around and with. The Placer County District Attorney's Office isn't necessarily advancing prosecution of camping citations. The jails are largely full and these individuals tend to be site released, and then it costs the city each time we take someone to booking. Chief, what is the number up to now? It's a couple $100.
Yeah, it's just shy of $1,000 now. It went up about $300 this year.
Okay. So it's just shy of $1,000 every time we take someone to the Placer County Jail to book them and then have them site released and return back to their encampment. So for a lot of those practical reasons, just arresting our way out of the solution, out of the issue is not a solution. But so we have implemented a number of other strategic opportunities. But because of the significant engagement that we do have with our homeless population, our code enforcement officers and our two community response officers now, SRT stands for
Specialized Response Team.
Specialized Response Team. I keep getting corrected. It's not a POP team, it's a SART team. So, but we know them all by name. We know their pets by name. We know a lot of their family members by name because that's another strategic element of our project is to try to re-engage these individuals with their families and hopefully get them rehoused or to start mending those fences so that that can become a housing opportunity for them. We've also seen, because of that increase in engagement in the creek, we've seen a lot of them say, to heck with it, I'm out of here, and pack up in their RVs and move back to whatever other communities they may have come from, whether that's any other, Oroville seems to be a popular one. So we're seeing a lot of success. We're seeing people taking us up on our opportunities for services more so than we have in the past. We still have that very sort of entrenched number of individuals in the ravine that are saying, I'm going to be here until I die, which we hope to avoid. We did have one death actually recently on the ravine because of some severe health conditions that aren't helped by living that type of lifestyle. So we're working really hard. Staff is doing an amazing job. I'm very proud of all of them. And so that's a little bit of insight for our community as to what is going on with the city. We're not just ignoring the problem and letting it fester. We really are being strategic and coming up with solutions that work for our community. And we will be coming back in the fall to workshop some of these ideas, potential changes to our camping ordinance, and obviously our pilot project. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
The 4 people that we got off the streets. You think of it in percentages, that's 10% of the population, the homeless population. If we continue that this year, it's 25%. Because you gave me the number of 25 people that are now. So what we're doing is working. And I think when you come back with what are we going to do when we run out of money, we're really going to have to think about it, because it is so far been an extremely worthwhile expenditure, time, effort, and money. I don't know how long that you can keep the volunteers, demand on the volunteers. So
that is the big issue.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I agree with you. I think program success reflects low-hanging fruit at this point. I think it's going to get more difficult as we go on to reach some of these more entrenched individuals, which causes me to wonder if we can use the SCOTUS ruling as a kind of a stick, and our program is the carrot, and somehow create our own version of a diversion program that gives them incentives to get into our program rather than face potential consequences down the road. Sure, you're already looking at that and how we could do that.
Absolutely. In my previous jurisdiction, before Martin versus Boise was an issue, I developed a citation clinic for the homeless, and it was basically a program where when individuals were cited for illegal camping, I set up and then did a table at the Salvation Army every Wednesday, and they would come in and we would hold sort of a mini diversion program and provide opportunities for them to either work off their tickets or to, get out of a laundry list of citations that perhaps they had that were keeping them out of the workforce. And so that is certainly something that we could look at working with the district attorney's office, and it would require an amendment to our ordinance, but certainly doable.
I'd be interested in looking at that.
I really appreciate the time that you took for a couple of reasons. There's been community members that have been reaching out to me about some of this, and I've sent some information to them, and it just wasn't quite satisfying to them. So part of the other reason that I'm really glad that you took the time to give us this information is we have it recorded now. It's on Zoom or it's on the YouTube channel, and so it's a great tool now for me to be able to get people to link to that information so that it doesn't have to be regurgitated in ways that maybe were not correct, but it comes straight from you, and now it's a great tool. And so that's another big reason I wanted you to take that time.
And we do have in progress, we're going to be putting up a page on our website with all of this information. It's just taking a little bit of time to compile and get it up to date with the new decision, and some policies and things are being tweaked to reflect that. So it will be up and running hopefully soon.
And I think one of the biggest things that for our community is not only awareness, but just knowledge, being connected to the knowledge of what is actually being done. And the more tools that we have, like this website, and being able to send out a link or video to the information, I think would be really awesome. Thank you.
Moving forward, council initiated business. Bill? No. Committee reports. Paul,
Yeah, very quickly. So you all know July is pretty much a dead month for our committees. However, the mayor and I and multiple members of staff attended the quarterly PCWA City of Lincoln, Placer County Water Authority, City of Lincoln. We call it a 2x2, but it's really more like a 6x6 conversation at this point in time. They're really good conversations, and the working relationship that we have with PCWA, I think, is one of the finest partnerships that we have working in the city of Lincoln on a regional level. So just very quickly, I'll walk through it. I think, Dan, if you've got any more you want to add to this, please do. I think the biggest element that would interest the public of our discussion was revolving around Pacific Gas and Electric Company's canal failure and the request from PCWA to Lincoln to begin pumping more water from our wells to try to offset the diminished delivery ability of PCWA. And I don't actually recall what the other communities were doing. Roseville is wheeling water to American, whatever that water agency is called, for Sacramento on behalf of PCWA. Rockland made an adjustment as well, but I don't recall what that was. You remember, Sean?
No. I don't know that.
They're a retail customer.
Yeah. So like the assistance that they're receiving is voluntary from customers, but as I think Paul mentioned it and Matt talked about, we're pumping a little more than we normally do this summer out of our own well system to try to provide a little bit of relief to some of the capacity issues they have. And, Matt could probably speak to it a little bit. It's not a horrible process really for us to be in because it's good to get those wells activated periodically and use those systems. You want to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, my understanding is that San Juan Water District is providing 2 million gallons a day, and Roseville is providing 2 million gallons a day. And then we're pumping 10% of our total daily supply, which is about 2 million gallons a day. So it's a regional effort to make up the difference.
The other element of that was coordinated public messaging, and that may be what I'm remembering of Rockland, is that they are part of that process of getting the message out to try to reduce use during this challenge. Other than that, the majority of our time was spent on legislative updates from the state of California, some of which, if they see the light of day, are a little bit scary for us in the not too distant future. That's it.
From the Lincoln Rural MAC, they had talked about an action item for Jaws and Paws Wolf Dog Sanctuary minor use permit application. So really, it was just talking about the area that they're serving for they have at a sanctuary with about 30 wolf dogs located in 16 kennels out there off of 7145 Superior Town Road. The site was zoned for 160 acres and is a 71.5 acres. So Jaws and Paws operates 7 days a week, 24/7. It's a pretty neat thing they have going on out there. That's all that I have.
The PCA, Placer Conservation Authority, meeting on the 17th. We adopted the budget for the year. And it's as good a budget as you can do when you have zero control over your revenue. One of the things that I suggested is that they look at a 2-year budget because they're very project oriented like we are, and the ability to move a project between years and not cause major budget report problems. And that was acceptable to them. So whether the county system supports that or not is to be seen. We adopted a mitigation agreement for the SMUD called the County Acres Solar Project, like a $25 million mitigation, temporary mitigation payment to PCCP.
Have you received that?
Yes.
What
We
I'm glad to hear.
received the first payment of it. I mean, it's staged on the development process.
How's that reflected in the budget?
I can't remember. Oh, well, fact is, we didn't get the payment till the last day, so it wasn't in the budget out there. Like, there were 5 items anyway. The other was the completion of the Morier West purchase. On the east, which is 240 acres, 264, and the west, which is 264. We were fortunate to get those with grant funding, except in the case of the west, which the grant funding looks like it might be $30,000-$40,000 short. So Placer Legacy will come up with those funds. Or it's hard to tell because this one is funded totally by the state with no federal funding. And so there's handling fees that aren't going to appear, so they may pick up the whole thing. Anyway, and that was it. The annual report, well, it's the same report that we got. City Council Pioneer meeting on the 18th. We went over legislative affairs. Those are always interesting at the same level problems that we saw at PCWA, only not only at the legislature, you have the rulemaking and the CPUC, which is we signed an agreement with an outfit called Sequent IQ for energy portfolio optimization. There's a requirement levied on resource adequacy on an hourly basis. I have to report and program on an hourly basis. And this is the only company that has the software and the capability to do it. So it's a $200,000 contract, $197,000 that we're forced into just to satisfy a reporting requirement. We also voted on a rate adjustment. We're raising rates for, well, for all 3 entities, for Lincoln, for Placer County. If we didn't raise the rates, we're lowering the rates. Because if we didn't, we would be more than PG&E. PG&E just did a temporary rate adjustment because they overcollected. So as of July 1st through an undeterminate time, they've reduced their rates, which put Placer County and put us higher than PG&E, which is not acceptable by Pioneer.
So that's one of the dangers of tying to PG&E.
Well,
Right, they overcollect, you unknowingly overcollect, and then you gotta correct.
But there was a lot of really interesting to watch the board and the agency work. People are really, really concerned about the ratepayers. And we had very strenuous discussions. And what we ended up with is a 3% reduction for the next probably 6 months until the end of the year, which is when rates are set again. There was a more advantageous option, which said, well, you reduce the rate 5% for the summer months and then 1% for the winter months versus doing 3% straight across. It amounted to a 2-day difference in overall reserves. Well, it went to straight line, so we're not changing rates on people, because one of the other things that basic tenets for Pioneer is that our rates are stable. It isn't stable if you change them every 3 months. We had the power markets discussion and our strategic plan we approved. LAFCO, take them in order. The meeting on the 12th was request for an extension by the city of Lincoln for SUDB, the North, Special Use District 6B, Northwest Quadrant. And we extended it, authorized the studies for an SB MUD service review, and hired a temporary or interim assistant executive officer because our assistant quit. Updated the fee schedule. Meeting of the 16th was a strategic plan. And it's about the fourth meeting. Are close, but I think we have the final draft of the strategic plan. No direct impact on Lincoln. Then we come to a meeting on the 22nd. I'm sorry, the 12th. The 22nd, which was last Monday. We approved the request by the city of Lincoln to waiver the 1-year waiting period for annexation Village 5A. That passed, and we authorized the contract for the engineering services, on-call engineering services, to primarily support immediately starting the annexation project for Lincoln, as well as other work in the that is needed to be done because they're short-staffed. That's it. So the Village 5 annexation will now be looked at. It's been turned in for several months, but it has been opened. It is now open because the waiver was done. And that's it for that. Next item on the agenda is information items. Do we have any? Nope. Then we're adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you.